combat sports world is getting ready for another gigantic weekend as boxing is back in a big time way. Plus, WWE and AEW went to war, kind of. Well, the fans certainly did. So a lot to discuss coming out of the weekend and coming out of Monday, plus a lot to get ready for over the next couple of days. So let's dive right in and start talking about some boxing. It is a gigantic weekend in the sport of boxing, as it is Betterbiev versus Bivol 2. But it's not just that. It is definitely the most stacked boxing card in the history of the sport. And obviously there's a lot around that, right? And we'll get into the undercard fighters as the week goes on. It is something that always comes up, that there are some levels of discomfort when you were talking about a card based around Saudi Arabia, given a lot of the human rights violations and everything that is going on. And the concerns around sports washing, this is one of the concerns, is that now, instead of, okay, well, there's the Saudi Arabia money coming in and it's a blood money boxing event, now he's Santa Turkey and bringing in all of these different fights and stacking up this card in a gigantic way, giving boxing fans the card types that they could only dream of having. He has come in, Turkey Al Sheikh, by the way, he has come in and done that and put together just an unbelievable boxing card. And so there's always that little bit of when all of that is happening. So I just want to acknowledge that off the top. The other part of this is that, like, forever, you'll see, well, not forever, but you would see how the UFC did things. And they have these loaded cards, right? And it's big fight after big, in theory. That has certainly, I mean, you watched Fight Card last weekend. Oof. But in theory, there's at least a few fights on each card for a UFC card each weekend that has at least a little bit of consequence. That is not the case in boxing. But now they're trying it. Here's the one concern that I think you have from a boxing standpoint. For a UFC card to have a number of relevant fights is a little bit easier because those fights are 15 minutes, right? Like it is 3 5-minute rounds and then it's on to the next one. That is not the case in boxing. There are titles on the line. You know what that means? 12 rounds. You know what that means? 36 minutes. So I do think that this is going to be kind of drinking out of a fire hose for boxing fans this weekend. Whereas, all right, we finally got the stacked fight card we want. It's like, yes, you do. It might, hear me out, might be too stacked because it's going to be a really long day. I think the fight started like 7:30 in the morning and it has to, because it is going to be like, let's pull up this card. Let's really pull this one up and look at it here. So we have, let's just quickly get to it. February 22nd, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, DAZN pay-per-view. Zhilei Zhang taking on Ajit Kabayel for 12 rounds for the vacant WBC interim heavyweight title. 12 rounds, 36 minutes. Let's just say, probably not, but 36 minutes. Shakur Stevenson taking on Floyd Schofield. 12 rounds for Stevenson's WBC lightweight title. So 12 rounds, 36 minutes. All right, so we are up to 72 minutes of fighting. Joshua Buatsi taking on Callum Smith. 12 rounds for Buatsi's WBO light heavyweight interim championship. So 36 minutes. So that puts us up to now 108. This math is going to be a lot more difficult to do on the fly than I was hoping for. Virgil Ortiz taking on Israel Madrimov. 12 rounds for the vacant WBC junior middleweight interim title. So 36 minutes. You see where I'm coming from here. Carlos Adames takes on Hamza Shiraz. 12 rounds for Adames's WBC lightweight title. Middleweight title. Daniel Dubois against Joseph Parker. 12 rounds for Dubois' IBF heavyweight championship. And then Artur Betterbiev against Dmitry Bivol. 12 rounds for Betterbiev's undisputed light heavyweight championship. I need my calculator for this at this point. You notice I stopped doing the math there along the way. Nope, that's the camera button. I don't know why I screw that up all the time, but I do. Gonna leave all this in. So we have 36 minutes, potentially, but 36 minutes by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 252 minutes of boxing. And so just doing the, quick math on that one, that's 4.25 hours of just in-ring boxing. Just gonna no, they're not sprinting to the ring. And it's not just, all right, one fight ends, let's shovel one guy out and bring the next one in. Like, this is going to be a long day. So I'm very interested at the pacing, because the pacing on these Riyadh shows have not been perfect. I'm interested in the pacing, and I'm just interested, by the time we get down to Betterbiev against Bivol, is anyone going to have anything left in the tank from watching this one from start to finish? So I am intrigued by all of that, but I like that they're at least trying. And I think boxing cards, not all the way like this, because goddamn, that's a lot. But I think having 2 or 3 relevant fights on a card instead of 1 is definitely the way to go. Now let's get to the fight. Betterbiev with a chance to cement his legacy this weekend. It is the biggest rivalry of his career. It is certainly, these 2 fights have been the biggest spotlight he has ever had in this sport. A big win here cements, again, the legacy of him being the light heavyweight of this era. And he is now, like, he puts a stamp on the biggest moments of his career. I don't think we're talking about all-time great or anything like that, but it really does just kind of cement everything with what he is looking to do as a prize fighter. The other thing that you get here is, we talked about this a little bit with Benavidez at the start of the year. You now get a chance to get into some huge fights. Benavidez probably gets the winner of this fight, with one potential exception. We'll talk about that in a second. But a fight with Benavidez in September would be a huge seller. And then, if Canelo still wants the smoke in this division, you're the guy at the top of it. So again, a couple of huge paydays could be coming Betterbiev's way, and a chance to really cement that legacy in the late stages of his prime here. For Bivol, he needs to even this rivalry up. Like, this is, again, all the things we said about Betterbiev are true about Bivol. This is the biggest spotlight he has had in his boxing career. And if he goes 0-2 on that, that is first line of the bio stuff, right? Probably unjustifiably so, but that is first line of the bio. Even with the win against Canelo, it is known for his rivalry where he lost 2 fights with Betterbiev. No one wants that on there, so he needs this fight to even that one up. And I think he's an awesome fighter. I didn't want to say he needs this win to stay relevant, because I think that is a wild miscalculation and over-exaggeration about the stakes for this weekend. But a win here sets him up for an epic trilogy fight, and then potentially the stuff we were talking about before with a Benavidez fight and a Canelo fight. Or even he gets a Benavidez fight and then a Betterbiev one and then Canelo, or whatever. But it sets you up for big fight on down the way. A loss here, now you have 2 losses to the undisputed champion at light heavyweight. If you're going to move up or move down, there needs to be a win before you were getting into a few wins before you were getting into that level again. So this is, there are 2 paths, and one is really difficult to deal with if he goes down the way of losing. So we will see how Betterbiev and Bivol handle all the pressure this weekend. Coming up later this week, we're going to look at the undercard fighters to watch on this particular fight card. Let's now move to the world of professional wrestling, as AEW and NXT shared the spotlight this weekend, and the fans took that opportunity to fight each other all the time with it. But is it really worth it? Let's break down some of the stuff that we saw this weekend and over the last little bit. Let's start with AEW Grand Slam. AEW Grand Slam took over Australia. Not in the way that they would have wanted to initially, but still they were there. There's been a lot talked about this show. When you sit down, if you just sat down and watched this in a vacuum, like in 10 years, when Conrad Thompson is doing AEW retrospectives on his podcast with Cool Hand Ange, that they're going to go back and watch the show and you know what? There was a lot of negative talk around this thing. I enjoyed it. It's a fun wrestling show. I don't know why. That's a really bad accent. It doesn't sound at all like Conrad Thompson. And I actually really enjoy the show, so I don't know why I did that. But if you just watch this without knowing any of the outside whatever, this was a fun wrestling show. I think I was putting too much expectations on it this week because it was a gigantic event, or supposed to be a gigantic event to start. And so that stayed in my head. It's like, oh, you need to build it, need to whatever. It was a fantastic collision, and that's what it eventually turned into. The problem is it was collision, and you get a lot of the, I don't want to say bait and switch or anything like that, but there was a lot of people frustrated that they spent stadium pricing on a not stadium show, and that's what they got. And so there was a lot of frustration around that. There is also, I think, a level of embarrassment around AEW where you advertised that you were doing a stadium show in Australia and then you had to fill up an arena. And that sucks. And that is very emblematic of where AEW is right now. I will say, like, that arena looked cool. I didn't think that there was any issues with how the place looked. I thought it came across as a relatively important television show. I know there was a lot of talk about the ring. We'll get to that in a little bit. But overall, I thought the presentation of this, and I thought everything was good. And then we got a very good wrestling show out of it. It began with Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay taking on Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita, and that match delivered. I thought this was a really, really fun match. There we go. Sorry. Long stream. Need some water. Apologies. Also, said this last time, Sea of Dead sticker. You get one of these when you order anything from seaofdead403.car, presenting sponsor. Really, really fun match. Kenny Omega has a bit of a slip going over the top rope on the one tope, but aside from that, this match delivered. The crowd was really into it, and it was fun, and all four performers looked awesome. I also like that it sets things up now for Revolution, where Omega is going for the International Championship, Ospreay is going for Fletcher in a steel cage. All of that sounds like it's going to be epic, all of it sounds amazing, and all of it is logical coming off of what we just had. So, cool. Makes sense. Then we get to the TBS Championship as Mercedes Mone goes up against Harley Cameron. And you guys know I was not in favor of this being the match. I thought that Harley Cameron should have been maybe the sidekick for someone maybe a bit more legitimate as a title challenger going into this one. I will say, though, this was fun. Harley Cameron really won me over in the build-up to all of this in a way that I didn't expect at all. She held her own in this match. Like, you go into the build-up for it. She has that really serious promo on Dynamite where she's like, I didn't know I could do this until I could. And then she speaks in Mandarin for a second there and does all of those things. She's really entertaining, and she was able to get serious when the moment called for it. And then in the ring, I thought she was fine. So there is something here with this one. I still don't love the idea of building up a challenger using one victory and a hand puppet, but we got a very entertaining character out of Harley Cameron. And I think there is a lot there with this character. And so this was a little bit of a, hey, why did it take this to get to this point with her? She is really entertaining on a show that kind of needs it. So why are we just having her be a laughingstock back there? Like, let's use this now. And so this is the thing with this show. And it's something that WWE stumbled with a little bit. Like when they were doing all the international shows and are still doing the international shows. You have Alba Fire and Isla Dawn win the women's tag team titles in their hometown. Obviously, that didn't go well because one of them's not with the company anymore. So, not ideal at all. And so you get into that sort of a thing where, okay, do we give them the hometown pop? Do we just whatever? And something like this is good to get a spotlight on someone who wouldn't necessarily have that. See what you have with them, and now see if you could advance that going forward now. So now you found out you have something with this. Use it. Don't just have her be a comedy character on Collision now. There's something here. Take advantage of it. Use that character now. I thought she was great. Another concern of mine definitely did ring true. There was, anyway, some excitement and some momentum building around Mercedes Mone. It did seem like people were turning on her in a non-TV heel sort of a way. Like you see a few pictures on X and it's her with the Hulk Hogan mustache, like, oh, can't lose to anyone or anything like that. And like, it was such a rough debut. And it has been a bit of a rough go outside of WWE in getting any kind of legitimacy because of some injury problems. And then the debut in New Japan didn't exactly click the way that it wanted to. But there have been some very good matches coming out of this now. And a couple of feuds that have started to click. And so this was starting to be a heel character that was getting over in heelish type ways. This was a little bit more of a, ugh, type of a thing rather than a, oh, that dastardly Mercedes Mone. So I think you have a little bit of a concern of losing your audience with something along these lines when they kind of get invested in this underdog against a heel character that is very easy to not like anyway, and it just kind of doesn't go their way. So I'm a little bit worried that people might start to turn on this character one more time in a way that isn't necessarily productive to what they're trying to do. It was also a bit of a difficulty in building this show around a lot of Aussies, which obviously you do. It's Australia, and you get the big moment at the end, spoiler alert, but we just had about an hour and a half of Oceania wrestlers getting their asses kicked, right? Like a New Zealand dude loses. There's an Australia lost. Another Australia lost. So you had a bit of a rough go for the Aussie, oi, 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 featuring New Zealand on this card. And so that was a little bit tough when you're building a whole card around that. But that's just a side note there. Then we get into the hardcore deathmatchy match of the show, as it's Jay White and Cope taking on the Death Riders. It was a pretty good match. This one though was the opposite of the first one, where the first match you delivered a very entertaining match, and now a lot of different possibilities going into Revolution and possibilities people are excited about. You get that. No one's excited for the Death Riders. This didn't advance anything at all. No one cares about Copeland against Moxley. No one knows what's next for Jay White, but I don't think anyone's going to be excited about it coming off of this one. It was just another in a long line of the Death Riders winning and the babyfaces continuing to look less than. And I understand the want to build up a big heel unit. I do think you can have a "this is our night" moment where Lex Luger won the title, and then Tony Schiavone was screaming it. Ironically, Tony Schiavone on the call for this one. You can have that moment. The NWO doesn't need to win every match. You can have that. There was no reason for the Death Riders to win this match. None. There's a post-match beatdown thing. You can do that again if you really need to get the heat back for these guys. But if you, like, Edge spears Claudio and gets the win, how hard does that irreparably damage this otherwise on fire storyline? No, I agree that the first time Moxley gets his shoulders pinned to the mat, that should feel like a big deal. But Claudio, you put him in a match with Jeff Jarrett, and he needed to cheat to win that. My guy can go through a table and get pinned by Edge. Like, I hated this whole storyline, and I have given it a lot of leeway. But this whole storyline with the Death Riders, it has lost so much momentum, and all because they are so afraid of booking these guys to lose any sort of match or any sort of build or any sort of anything. And now, like, it's dragging. It's really, really dragging, and no one's buying into Copeland winning, and we're all just ready for either Ospreay or Omega to get their championship match coming up at All In. And we're just killing time until then. But while we're doing it, it is so dull and so boring. It is like they took every lesson from the NWO and just mislabeled it okay, here's what not to do, here is what to do. They looked at the what not to do as, okay, this is our checklist, let's go. Like, it's been awful. And this one didn't help that at all. Buddy Matthews taking on Kazuchika Okada. This is where I do need to say, I liked this show. I know there's a lot of negativity around it, and it is kind of feeling like where I was at with WWE when we started out here in Calgary Combat Central and stuff like that. Like, you go on, you watch the match, and it's fun, and you watch the wrestling, and it's great, and then you start to analyze it a little bit, and it's like, well, this is dumb. And so that's where I'm at with AEW. I really enjoyed this as a wrestling show, but then you look at it at a broader context, and it's like, this doesn't, the math isn't mathing on it. Matthews against Okada. This was, again, a good match. These two guys, I thought, brought it. And I thought there was a little bit of the story with Okada recognizing that there's a champion's advantage and him just not wanting to deal with Buddy Matthews. I don't think Buddy is incredibly elevated from this or anything like that. But I do think that this did show at least he can hang in this level. Here is my issue with it. Mid-card Okada has to stop. This is one of the biggest stars in the world in professional wrestling. And his first time coming to North America on a consistent basis, and we have him in the mid card. We have him as a buffer match between the people being pissed about the Death Riders and getting ready for Tony Storm in a championship match featuring a belt that is either second or fourth in the pecking order, and we're not entirely sure where that is. Like, if the WWE had Okada, if he had gone there in free agency, and Okada was a mid-card intercontinental champion walking around calling everyone a bitch, we would be crushing WWE for this. And so I feel like the Okada situation is one that, and AEW doesn't get a lot of leeway from a lot of different parts of the internet, and I understand that, and I'm adding to it here. But I feel like AEW has gotten a bit of a pass on just how horrendously they have used Okada so far. Still, like, can he go 45 minutes at the Tokyo Dome or 59 minutes and whatever seconds went with Kenny Omega at Osaka Joe Hall? I'm sure if called upon, he could do that a couple of times. But I don't think he is the guy that he was a few years ago, but he is still a dude. There is still an aura around the Rainmaker, and they are chipping at that so badly with all of this. So we need to get this guy into that main, like, we're talking about the main title picture right now with Moxley and Edge and I understand Copeland, and Omega and Ospreay. Okada should be in that mix, and no one is discussing him for a potential championship match at All In. We got a bit of a buzz with Omega and Okada when Omega came back out after the Continental Classic. But, like, since then, there's no real talk of Okada being in anything. And I feel like they need to really pick up the pace with that guy. Then we get Tony Storm and Mariah May. This was everything it needed to be. It was a great match. The presentation was good. Luther as the usher. Nigel McGuinness with an amazing line where, if you didn't watch the show, Luther is dressed up as, like, an usher at the arena. And Tony Schiavone, who was on the call, who did amazingly, by the way. Tony Schiavone is on the call, and he was like, oh, he's dressed up as an usher the whole time. Nigel McGuinness is like, I don't know a whole lot about R&B, but I don't think that's very accurate at all. It's like, not the singer. That one got me. Nigel and Tony Schiavone were amazing all night. But Luther comes out, and it's a callback, and it's whatever, and it's all this fun. And then it felt like this match hit all the notes that it needed to, and it was great. The one thing I do think from it, though, is we get the quick roll-up finish, so I'm assuming we get now the rubber match coming up at Revolution. This feud has elevated both performers in a real big way, and I'm excited. If we just go right back to the rematch at Revolution, no problem with that. If there is any kind of a buffer and we try to drag this thing out until All In the summer, I think you could do that with these two. But I do think that this is probably ending in some kind of a graphic hardcore sort of a way coming up at Revolution, and then maybe a Mina Shirakawa feud with Mariah May comes out of that one. Now, a lot of the talk about the presentation after, a lot of talk about the small ring and everything like that. It's noticeable when you start the show. Like, it is noticeable that it kind of does look like someone's toy ring that they set up in trying to make some sort of a UGC thing for a ring company that makes toys. Like that, it looked like that. But then once the show starts, I didn't notice it a whole lot at all. I'm sure there are some finer points where you could notice, well, this guy had to even do this because of the small ring. Blah, 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 blah. I'm sure that I didn't really notice it. I thought Tony Schiavone absolutely killed it. I thought he did an unbelievable job. Him and Nigel McGuinness, I thought, were great on this. And again, like the wrestling, all of it, this was a really, really entertaining show. If you dive into some of the why for a lot of it, it gets a little bit frustrating. But the actual in-ring ability stuff that we saw, fantastic. Excellent show. I would go out of my way to watch this one. Let's go to the world of WWE. Full disclosure, I haven't fully finished NXT Vengeance Day yet, so not going to do a full recap of it here. Going to do an NXT preview coming up in a little bit. We have some WWE block coming up here now, so let's dive in and go all the way back to Friday and recap what we saw from SmackDown. Smooth, no problems at all. All right, it is SmackDown. It came to us from somewhere as the road to WrestleMania continues. Just a couple of quick notes from this one. We're not going to go blow by blow on this or on the Raw breakdown coming up for those watching the full video here. Trish Stratus getting involved in the Tiffany Stratton-Nia Jax feud I think is interesting. I do kind of wonder if Trish sticks with Tiffany going into Mania season. Like, have her be the kind of legend coach with Tiffany Stratton, working her into a babyface character and adding a little bit of legitimacy to her with Charlotte Flair. I think you could very easily do that. I also wonder, do we just get Nia Jax against Trish Stratus at WrestleMania? I don't hate Trish. I don't wish that upon her, but I wonder if that is a way that they could go as well. So I'm intrigued with the direction of this one. Charlotte Flair picks Tiffany Stratton after the Nia Jax beatdown, which that one didn't make a whole lot of sense either. If we're going to poke logical holes in AEW, twice last week, title challengers cost themselves their championship match by getting disqualified. One, it was the Creed's American Made with the title shot on the War Raiders, and the other, it was Candice LeRae getting involved and interfering on Nia Jax's behalf in a match that Nia Jax was largely dominating. So that didn't make sense, and I think it kind of sucked. So just I needed to note that. But after the beatdown was done, like, it gets us to the point of Trish in there, but I think there was a way to do that and still, like, Tiffany could have just beat Nia Jax. Like, we could have just done that. I don't know why we didn't need to give Tiffany that win, but either way, after the post-match beatdown is done, Charlotte Flair comes in, challenges Tiffany Stratton for the championship at WrestleMania. It makes all the sense in the world. It's a battle of eras and all of these things. The one thing, Tiffany can't lose that match. Like, I don't think we're at a point where Charlotte needs to be champion right now. I think you have a potential star in Tiffany Stratton with the athleticism, the in-ring ability, and obviously is a human being that doesn't suck to look at. So I think you have a lot of potential there in that. I am not saying a loss to her at WrestleMania forever sets her back or anything like that, but I think that would be a significant mistake from a storytelling standpoint. Speaking of which, Solo Sikoa attacking Cody Rhodes is just kind of a thing. I don't think Cody needs to be back in the Bloodline universe right now. I think that those could have been sides that stayed separate. If you wanted to get Cody a match with Solo at whatever, or wanted to get Cody on this card in some way in Toronto, fine, I guess. I feel like there's other ways you could have done it instead of bringing him back into a storyline that he is so closely tied with and just so does not feel like a spot that should be given to someone going after, sorry, I'm all over the place. The Bloodline shouldn't be in the same universe as Cody right now after everything that they have gone through, especially Solo right now. Like, that just, it doesn't make a lick of sense, and I kind of really hate it, as is obvious by the fact that I'm stammering all over the place on it. Jacob Fatu does come across continually as an absolute superstar, and now it does seem like it is going to be him against Solo Sikoa coming up at Mania. The reveal of Liv and Raquel as the attackers on Jade, it felt a little underwhelming, and it does seem a little obvious that this was just one part of the story, and like Naomi immediately being like, yeah, knew it was them, let's go after him. Well, no, this wasn't, no. It was them. They existed in the same area, and someone thought enough of it to put the camera over there. So, got him. Like, it does seem like it is trending in the Naomi direction. And so this just felt like it was more an excuse of a match. And so we all agree that the main reveal is going to come a little bit later, but it shouldn't make this feel any less whatever. Like, it takes the story back a little bit when you treat what is supposed to be maybe a bit of a bait and switch, like, well, it's a bait and switch and everyone's gonna know it, so whatever. Like, it drags the whole thing down. So I'm not super interested in it, and it's one of those ones that it feels like we're just killing time until the real thing actually begins. So that was SmackDown. What about Raw the following Monday, as WWE wrapped up Monday Night Raw last night, as we get ready now for the Elimination Chamber. So what happened on Monday Night Raw? Let's break it all down. The WWE's Elimination Chambers are now full, as the road to WrestleMania, and specifically the road to Toronto for Elimination Chamber, continues. Seth Rollins against Finn Balor. This match was a lot of fun. The flashlights, that was interesting. That kind of led me to think that maybe they weren't all that interested in that match. And maybe that's some confirmation bias, because I've said before, I'm not overly invested in Seth Rollins right now. But the match was really, really good. And it was the only way that match should have gone. And so now you have just an unbelievably loaded Elimination Chamber match with a lot of guys who I think could put on a lot of really fun moves and a few different interesting ways that you could go with that particular match. Gunther going through the crowd a la Jey Uso was so good. And then him intimidating McAfee about, hey, do you really think this guy can win? Really? Like, he is playing his role perfectly. And we had talked about it a few while ago about how there was some concern that it was starting to lean a little babyface with Gunther. This is why you don't do that. He is so good at just being an arrogant fuck. And, he was great. He was so good in that role. And now Jay playing the underdog character really well is great. We're still a couple of months out. As of right now, I'm giving Jey Uso the strap at WrestleMania, man. He has taken this ball and just hit home run after home run after home run with it. And it's been really impressive to see him get to that level. It does seem like we have set up the Intercontinental title feud for WrestleMania with AJ Styles and Braun Breaker getting to do their thing. AJ was great as always. He and Braun, like that should be just a phenomenal, pardon the pun, match coming up. And hopefully we do get that at WrestleMania. I love Roxy going into the chamber. She beats Raquel Rodriguez. Obviously there was some outside assistance from Naomi and from Bianca Belair in this. But still, like, I think this is going to be an unbelievable showcase for her. The build is a little bit weird, though, because you have Cole talking about her as this unbelievable Cinderella run, and then she's coming on doing a vignette talking about how she doesn't care that everyone hates her and all those things. Like, I just... It's weird to have Cinderella tell everyone to go fuck themselves, you know? So it felt a little strange to me. And then I'm a bit underwhelmed with Penta going against Kaiser and Pete Dunne. Like, I get you don't want to too much too soon this or anything like that, but it could be more sooner than Kaiser and Pete Dunne. Like, this just... It feels like it is placing Penta in, like, a European title division. And not because the guys are from Europe. But just, like, old school WWE Attitude Era. Like, it feels like that's where you're planting him. And now, that means he gets to win on his way up and all of those things, but this is... It feels like it is a little beneath him right now. And so I don't love that. I'm hoping that this wraps up quick, and then maybe he gets to be with Mysterio in the New Day Mysterio feud. I don't mind the LWO coming out and calling out the New Day in that, by the way. I thought Kofi, like, he, again... When they are able to cut promos and advance these stories, they actually make some sense. Like, yeah, I've been here longer. Ray had a little bit of a part in between where he left and did Lucha Underground and a few Japanese things and, you know, all that. But, so I thought their reasoning made some sense. And then the LWO comes out and attacks, and, like, it gets them some screen time. Dragon Lee, I think, is really underutilized right now. And so I'm happy that we get to see him. But... and it also will make the New Day look better when they beat them. So that is the story there from WWE. One more to go as we put a bow on the wrestling stuff for today. Let's take a look at NXT and get ready for tonight's program coming out of Vengeance Day. So, coming off of Vengeance Day, it is now the road to Stand and Deliver for NXT, which... doesn't have the same ring as the road to WrestleMania, but it's the same spot, just with a few 100,000 less people. The main thing around this is going to be the contract signing of Ricky Starks. Obviously, a lot of people have noted that they haven't actually said Ricky Starks yet. They have said Absolute a couple of times, but it's just been, hey, there's that guy. And now I am going to sign my contract on Tuesday. I would be surprised if his name wasn't Ricky Starks. I'm sure there's just a couple I's that need dotted and T's that need crossed before they can get to that particular thing. But either way, the men's main event scene in NXT really needs some work, and I think he'll be a great addition to that one. I was assuming we were going to get Obafemi against Trick in their rematch at Stand and Deliver, but Eddie Thorpe winning the strap match, I think, changes the math on that a little bit. It does kind of seem now like Trick is just going to go up to the main roster and do that. But like Oba, he gets the win over Grayson Waller and Austin Theory, although he does kind of feel like that did not feel like a big thing at all. And it feels like maybe some steam has come off of Oba a little bit through no fault of his own. I think he needs a real blow-away feud here going into Stand and Deliver to get some of that momentum back. Interested to see who's now next for Julia and Stephanie Vacour. They both now hold some gold with some interesting challengers. Roxy feels like she's graduated up to the main roster. Bailey, that this was probably only just a quick stop away. And Cora Jade, I don't know if you just go right back into that one. Jordan Grace would seem like the obvious, but maybe they look to build that up a little bit and not have all of the new established stars all in the title picture right away and kind of ease some things into it. And then another part of it too, I'm interested a little bit in what's next for Fraxium. They get the win on Saturday. The tag team division in NXT isn't all that great, but I don't like, these guys are really entertaining. It does seem like they would get called up and just be forgotten about immediately, you know? So I feel like they're in this weird spot where there isn't really a division for them. They've kind of done everything. Everyone's just ready for them to not be there anymore, but there isn't much of a division if they leave, and there isn't much of a spot for them in the main roster when they leave. So they're in a bit of a tough spot right now. In that tag team division. And then the stuff with the family and the Sean Spears thing, that was a bit of an interesting twist. We'll see how that one progresses coming up later on today. So, bit of a longer stream. That's going to do it for this one today. I know on Monday I had said a video game stream is coming on Wednesday. That was before I forgot that, or before I realized I forgot, that I have another live show on Sportsnet 960 The Fan coming up on Thursday, which makes doing the live stream, as we have all seen, a little challenging. So tomorrow is going to be another multiple episode podcast day, I believe, and hoping to squeak some video game stuff in there as well. So as always, follow me on social media to get all the updates on when we're going to be going live here on Twitch and when all the videos go up on YouTube and everything like that. Check out seaofdead403.ca for some great Calgary swag, and check me out tomorrow right here on twitch.tv/primetimepk. Thank you all so much for hanging out today, and talk to all of you later.